Jim Calhoun went in front of the Committee on Infractions back in October, defending that he did have an atmosphere of compliance, and he told his assistants not to deal with Josh Nachumson. Clearly, the NCAA did not believe the case, believe his case.
And obviously they didn't, but I look at the penalty and go, 3 games next year? That's almost what we did with Ohio State and the players, right, for the football thing. But I think that's the thing that you have trouble with when you're hearing from and dealing with the NCAA. Does the punishment fit the crime? And I think 3 games next year in the Big East, they'll weather that storm. But I just don't understand how, with the postseason upcoming, those aren't following you into the postseason.
You mean for Calhoun or the team?
Well, I think for Jim. I mean, right, the team, no, absolutely not. The team deserves to play in the tournament. I just wonder, as we did with Ohio State, Adrian, I don't know what your thoughts are, but
I think it's a misremembered. I hadn't seen anything like this since Roger Clemens told Andy, another Andy, he misremembered about, the drug use. The bottom line is, Coach really won't miss any substantial time. They won't take away the cash cow, which is the NCAA tournament, and they won't be penalized for any of the games. So it's a lot to do about nothing. And how can you really hurt a legend? It's really with his reputation. His reputation is still going to be intact and remain intact.
It's remarkable. He's already in the Basketball Hall of Fame. This is their second run in with the NCAA, yet Jerry Tarkanian's not in, Lefty Drizel's not in, Eddie Sutton's not in. By the way, Eddie Sutton wasn't actually named to the Kentucky report when that program came down, yet for whatever reason, he's not enshrined in the Basketball Hall of Fame, despite being the only coach with 800 or more wins to do so. As for Connecticut, it is a slap on the wrist. One, it's a good sign for Tennessee. It's a good sign for Oklahoma, who had a very similar situation, a third party with an assistant coach. But if the NCAA wants to stop these third parties from being involved, then you gotta, whoever is determining that the third party should be involved, in this case, Jim Calhoun and his coaching staff, you gotta punish them. You gotta keep him, he should not be able to coach in the NCAA tournament. I don't think he should be fired, okay? I do understand this is kind of the business they've chosen, and whatever he said to his assistant coach that didn't listen, and now Bo Archibald takes the bullet for it, but if you these coaches coached for the ego boost that is the NCAA tournament. He wants to be the maestro. So he's going to miss the DePaul game next year, the Providence game.
Well, we don't know.
Year.
I mean, it's the first 3.
Who cares? It's the first 3.
They're going to play DePaul 3 times in a row.
Hold him out of the Big East tournament. Hold him out of the NCAA tournament. Otherwise, don't hold him out at all. I mean, if you're going to punish him, punish him. If not, don't punish him.
And the key thing in the difference between this case and Tennessee is that SEC Commissioner Mike Slive suspended Bruce Pearl for the first 8 games of the SEC this season. And the NCAA Committee on Infractions, whenever they get to that case, they can still tack on to Pearl's penalty. This was the NCAA, not the Big East, handing this down to Jim Calhoun.
Doug's made this point earlier, is that it's going to be interesting to see what the NCAA does with Tennessee following this ruling, because the two situations are diametrically opposite. On one hand, you have Calhoun, who obviously the NCAA didn't believe him and his story of sort of plausible deniability, that he told his assistants that not only that he just didn't know what was going on, but that he actively told his assistants to stay away. I don't think the NCAA really believed that, but they didn't really act on it that heavily either. And so then when you look at Bruce Pearl's situation, he made the effort to go back for various reasons to the NCAA and correct the record. And so does that hold any water with the NCAA? Does it matter to them? Or is it the punishment for the initial crime going to be even more stiff than what we've seen in Jim Calhoun's
Because
case?
the initial crime isn't as great, or at least we're told it's not as great, as the secondary violation that was committed when Aaron Kraft and Josh Selby were at his house, despite the fact being juniors. It's the lying to the NCAA. Right. So I guess here's the question. What's worse? Lying to the NCAA, then coming back and going, you know what, that wasn't right, that's not the truth, I'll fix it. Whenever he did it, the timeline is, of course, there's a gap in time there. Or is it not being completely and totally honest with the NCAA committee, and then them coming out and saying, that was a really good story, but we don't really buy it, so we're going to punish you? Which is worse? I think that's the question.